Hello and welcome to Mama Bali, which is where I am right now as I record this. I was due to do a podcast on someone else's little YouTube channel and my internet was so bad. So I thought I would just jump on, and it's the perfect opportunity to talk about something that has been coming up again and again, and something I work in depth with a lot of the time on a very somatic and energetic level. And I'm talking about inner child work, inner child healing. And I really want to deepen this conversation because there's a lot of noise in the realm of inner child healing. What is it? How do we do it? How do we really integrate our inner child and this piece and aspect of ourselves deeply into our body? And this is a key foundation, a key element of the work that I do, especially in regards to sex, sexuality, intimacy, relationships. It is one of the core pieces, I believe, because a lot of the way we show up in relationship, that we show up in intimacy, in family dynamics, in sexuality, is from our family dynamics. It is from our original imprinting of what our father was like, what our mother was like, what our peers and environment was like, what our siblings was like. And a lot of our developmental trauma is really imprinted on the body at these core stages of when you're a child, also when you're a maiden, and when you're a younger adult. But for this one specifically, I'm going to talk about inner child healing and how we can move through that. Some more tools, some more tangible tools and aspects of dropping into this. Because it's all well and good to say, heal your inner child, love your inner child, and all of these surface layer things. But I really want to talk about getting to the core of this, integrating this, healing this deeply, cellularly. So before I begin, I just want to give a brief overview of what is an inner child. Like, what is it? What is this aspect we speak of? And I'm going to talk a little bit about parts work. A parts work is a lot of the foundational therapeutic techniques that I do use in regards to, we all have different parts and fragments of self, right? And it's all about integrating them all to bring them all together to create this feeling of wholeness, to know that you're whole and integrated and deepen in your self-expression and your authentic nature. And one of the things that usually happens when we talk about these parts is they can be holding on to wounding and trauma and fragmentation. And so when I picture this, or when I see this, I really like to believe that it works differently for everyone, but for the ease of explaining it in this space, I believe that our body holds on to these things. So what happens is when we get a trauma hit or a intimacy hit or a relationship hit or create wounding in our bodies and ourselves, it affects us all differently. So there is no baseline, right? So what could be quite traumatic for you could be less traumatic for someone else, and they hold on to it differently and move differently, because the pain and sorrow is not what creates the trauma. It's the integration period after. It is the repair after the rupture. And that can be a multitude of different things. But what usually happens is we have an event that happens to us, and I like to see it as it kind of fractures ourselves in our body. It imprints, it kind of sticks, that we get that sensational feeling of ugh in our body. And if we don't know how to clear it and remove it at that time and space, it kind of stays stuck there in a time capsule. And this time capsule really creates like a hardening to protect. It's like if you fracture a bone and you get that calcification on the outside to harden it, to make it whole again, to repair, instead of getting down into the bone and like really breaking it out. But that's the way I see it. And that's interesting to note, because a lot of the times these fractured or traumatized pieces do harden. They do stay stuck in wounding, and then they stay stuck in a time capsule because they don't mature. So sometimes they hide, they get scared, frightened, they feel the need to protect this very fragile or this very vulnerable piece of self. And what will happen is, most of the times, this inner child aspect embedded in ourselves really shows up in those key human aspects: sex, intimacy, trauma, relationships. And they can act out of trauma, they can act out of wounding. And this is why it's important to heal this. And so is this piece and part of us, it's like in the mystery, it's this intangible, energetic aspect of self. So how do we make this intangible, energetic aspect of self tangible in the physical? And then how do we move it through somatically in the physical flesh? And sometimes it really helps to actually project this piece and part of you outside of self. It is one of the key aspects that I have learned in doing somatic therapy and Gestalt therapy, is these energetic pieces that you're holding on to and these parts of you. You can really get a more grounded human aspect if you project them out into other. And so what I like to do is use pillows and sit on one pillow and put another pillow in front and project that piece of my inner child out, or my client's inner child out, onto the pillow, and really dive deep into, what does she look like? What does she sound like? What is she wearing? What is her expression? How is she feeling? Really getting a visual or a real tangible aspect of this energetic imprint of you. And this gives you and opens you up space to really speak to this part of you, to really talk to this part of you and create this connection once more. And then what I like to do is move over to the other pillow and embody this inner child aspect, how it moves, how it feels, how it dresses, what is it doing? And speaking back to self, and really repeating this process to get a really good handle, because a lot of the times we separate ourselves from this innocence, this inner child aspect again and again. And so much so that it does seem like another person. It doesn't seem like an integrated part of self. And so we have to somatically work with it, reconnecting, start to open up our arms again wide and connect with this piece, and then integrate it and call it back home. And so when I first started doing this work, when I first started working with my inner child came to me as like quite a hideous alien monster. Like, it was quite scary, because I was so far disconnected and disassociated from my inner child that I couldn't even recognize it. It was so heavily like dark and black with trauma. And over the time doing this technique, she returned back to her like normal childlike innocence and essence. I could really see her and feel her and connect with her and bring her back in. And so it's really important, if you're doing this somatically, to move through the feelings in the body, because that's where we hold them. So how does it feel? What sensations are alive? How do they want to express and move through you? Because sometimes language and words is not enough. Right? And this is what we're seeing on surface level talk therapy. It doesn't get deeper into the cells, to the body, into the core, because a lot of the times our language is our second language. Like, our first language is the primal, the sensations, the feelings, and allowing them to move through you, to voice them, to sound them, to scream them, to cry them, to purge them. And that's really important when you're yourself talking to your inner child, and then also when you're your inner child talking back to you, because they could have some stuck energetics, they could have some stuck not finished stress cycles that need to be moved through the body and the system. And it's really important that they do that, and it's really important that they are held in that. So if this is your first time, I highly recommend getting somebody who is a somatic therapist or a coach in the realms of these sort of energetic fields to really help you integrate this back in, because we do have to invite her back inside into self and not just sort of leave her out there. This is one of the greatest tools I have found working with an inner child, myself and clients. And it's really important that we do things for our inner child on a somatic level. So they talk about writing down, what you did as an inner child and what was your fun and what was your play as a child, and then do those as an adult. But I find we really have to sing the sacred back in. We really have to bring the consciousness back into these aspects. So it's not enough just to go and do the thing. Like, there has to be an honoring and a devotion as to the why. The energetic of the why is so important. So one of my all-time favorite things is to dance. I was a dancer when I was a child, and dancing brings me to life. It really helps me connect with my inner child. And before I dance, if I'm devoting that dance to my inner child or embodying my inner child, I give a moment of prayer or intention setting, and I tap in, and I just really say, like, this is for you, younger Shiana. This is for you. This is for you to express. This is you to be safe. You are held. I see you. I witness you. But this is an honoring and a devotion to you. And so then I will move through my embodiment and my movement and move it out of my body. And this is really important to do as you do anything, I believe, with whatever aspect you're working with. But it's really, the energetic why is just so important. And so I use a lot of pleasure practices as well in regards to this, like devoting a practice to an inner child, devoting a practice to a younger essence of self, and then moving into pleasurable self-touch. Because a lot of the times as children, we were shunned or shamed or got told that we were dirty or naughty or bad for touching ourselves and claiming our bodies and our sexuality. And so I find we have to go back and rewire this and really sink into the innocence of just like erotic expression and touch and pleasure from an aspect of self that just found the fun in touch, that just found the pleasure and the play and the love in touching oneself. And this is a deeper practice and can be quite hard if you have religious trauma, religious conditioning around the body and it being sinful, or anything like this. And it takes time and slowness and graciousness. And I really love the foundational pieces of singing the sacred back in everything, because really a large piece of my work is sacred embodiment. So there is sacredness in our breasts, in our pussy. There is sacredness in our sexuality, in our orgasm. There's God there too. There's sacredness there too. And so it can be a real unwinding to remember that, and a reclamation and remembrance, but it has to happen really softly and slowly and patiently. And it's one of the fastest ways for me personally, as a child sexual assault survivor, to move through that in my body and system, to move through abuse in my system from my inner child, by reclaiming my sexuality, from reclaiming my body, from going back in as an inner child aspect and exploring curiously with wonder and play without judgment, because everything is so geared towards performance and how it looks. And it really isn't about that. Coming home to the body and to the self and to the inner child and integrating it isn't about how it looks. It's about how it feels. It's about the energy and the intention and the devotion. And I find if you are still in relationship with God, like this can be a beautiful space to welcome God in, right? To welcome God in to help you guide the way, to show you how to clear it somatically through the body, to help you how to clear it with sound and movement. Because the key pieces to moving anything out of your body and out of your system, you don't have to go back into the story or the narrative, but it really is about sound. It really has to be spoken. Sound, there's power in our voice, there's power in our throats, and the vibration and the tone is powerful and potent. Like a big rage scream is so needed for our inner child sometimes. A big rage scream is so needed for our feminine. And it just releases and becomes lighter, and we've been conditioned to fear it. There's nothing to fear. And there's power in this deep, guttural, like heart-wrenching sorrow that just transmutes through your body. And so I believe the key elements to remove anything somatically through your body is sound, movement. So body movement, expressing, whether that's shaking, whether that's thrusting, punching, crying, rocking, soothing. Movement allows energy to move. Movement allows the energy to be transmuted, to be shifted. It frees up space from your vessel, from your body, to allow that calcification to soften. Right? We have to move it out. And that looks different for each and every one of us. Breath is also super important on this journey. So really moving our breath to these places and these spaces that probably haven't been breathed before. If your inner child is holding on to a lot of residual muck, usually I find that is actually suffocated. It shows up somatically in the throat. Suffocation, being told to be a good girl, being told to shut up, be quiet, don't speak. Any emotion that's suffocated, be whatever it is, it just gets stifled in the throat. And then we have these grown women that are afraid to speak up, to set boundaries, to ask for their desires, their wants, their needs. I find that it shows up there. It shows up a lot in the heart, of course, our beautiful childlike hearts. And definitely the stomach is a huge place. The stomach, the umbilical cord, the umbilicus, because especially it being severed as a baby, we find a lot of like disgust and pain in the body around our bellies when we work with the inner child. And also, again, the pussy and womb for women, massive, massive. And so it's really important to get into these spaces somatically, and using intention. Intention is the last and final piece to move anything out, like your intention and your presence, making sure you set an intention, you set a prayer, you really, before you do a practice, whether it be a sexual practice, an embodiment practice, a therapeutic practice, and then allowing what is to be witnessed, seen, and heard. And sometimes this can be so powerful and potent when you have another person watching you, right? Like this is why we seek guidance and safe space holders, because truly being witnessed on that level and layer in this, the rawness, the vulnerability, and holding you in that space is so powerful for your healing. Allowing others to see you without changing, without wanting to change, without wanting to move it and shift it, allowing what is to be witnessed and to be sacred and to be felt, whether that's sorrow, grief, excruciating pain. So yummy. And so with the body, I learned a lot working with some Balinese healers and in shamanic lineages of Peru, that the body is actually the vessel, right? Like the body is the temple, the body is the vessel. And so when we're creating, when we're moving things through us all the time, it can, if we're too full and too dense and too hard, like we will not be able to flow, we will not be able to pull in. So it's important to actually use the physical body as a portal. And that can be with touch, right? Like that can be with like pressure touch, with massage, with holding spots of pain and density and sounding out and moving somatically the experience that you're just feeling in the body, in your bones, in your flesh. And this is key. This is key elements to coming home to the body, to connecting with the inner child, to release these residual stuckness in your body. And we don't have to fear the body. We don't have to fear the body. The body is the place where all things are birthed. Like we are truly the bridge. We are truly the bridge for heaven and earth, for God, for the divine, for the sacred, for the human expression. And yeah, this includes our inner child, and this includes in all pieces and parts of us. So wow, I really went into that deep today. I didn't think I was going to go that deep and that full and that that much information. I feel like I didn't pause, but it really wanted to come through obviously this morning. I hope this is helpful. I hope that this touches you deeply and you really start to remember this essence of your inner child, because I believe that the expression of our inner child, like this divine innocence and play, is our basically our baseline. This is how we are meant to be. We are creative beings. We are innocent beings, and that's our nature. And so if you're finding stuckness in your sexuality, in your pleasure, in your relationship, in your life, if you're finding it hard to soak up the joy, the wonder, the delight, the pleasure, the play, or if you're finding yourself really stuck on hyper focusing on that and not going to where the pain is, to where the sorrow and the grief is as well, you may have an inner child that is really subconsciously showing up for you and running these areas and aspects out of you on your life that are based around fear, that is based around old stories that you're holding on to, old narratives that are based on protection and safety. And so we really need to welcome her in and welcome the expression of the inner child. And we cannot do that if we are separate. So really calling that in, really moving through this somatically, really energetically showing up daily, because that is our rawest and truest expression. When we have this inner child aspect, I believe that is a person connected to the divine, the sacred, the humanness, and is a living wonder of what we are meant to be as these beautiful human beings. So I wish you so much love, and I hope that your inner child journey is wonderful and glorious and all of the things, and just holding you so tenderly as you move through this.